And action! Welcome along to another Filming and Fettling, and this one is all about the pilot cutter Jolie Brise and Tom Cunliffe's personal relationship with her over the years. If you haven't seen the original film, head on over to Tom's YouTube channel, the direct link is in the description below, and watch it there first. Then pop back here and you can see it again with my take on how it all came together. So these shots were provided by Jolie Brise's current skipper, Toby Maris, and there you can see the Fastnet Rock in the background. And then right away we're up the mast with a GoPro on a 3-meter pole. It's always a bit tricky to hold, but it gives you a nice shot. And then over the side to get the bow and tilting up for a nice title shot. I was very pleased with the music choice in this film. Orchestral always suits old ships. So Tom always likes to do his opening piece to camera, and this was no different.
On board Jolie Brise, one of the great racing yachts of all time.
In fact, this one was rather special. I think it's crucial to understand here just what Jolie Brise means to Tom, and his wife Roz, and actually his daughter Hannah as well. They all spent many, many months aboard, as you'll know if you've seen the film over on Tom's YouTube channel. But I think it's worth stressing here, from my point of view certainly, just how much Tom comes alive aboard Jolie Brise. I've known Tom for half a dozen years now, and everyone can see his passion for all things on the water. But experiencing Tom up close and personal, as inevitably happens when we're working, it's difficult not to get caught up in his enthusiasm. Everything about Jolie Brise and Tom is big. She's a big boat, he's a big man with a big personality and a big passion that reaches out to everyone he meets. I've been working in UK broadcast for over 4 decades and have worked with all manner of presenters and journalists and writers and so on. But everything about Tom is on another level.
The leather will last for years and years and years, and also it keeps things quiet. Because
what you see is what you get, and that doesn't stop just because I put the camera down.
Creak, and it'll drive people nuts who are trying to sleep down below. So a little bit of tallow absolutely does the job. You can't beat it, you know. This is nature's way, tallow. It's some sort of animal fat. It's got that smell to it. I love it.
I remember here we were motoring out of the Hamble into Southampton water, and we were just staring at the water over the side and feeling the breeze in our faces.
As with all gaff sails, there's 2 halyards here.
Being a sailor myself, but with very little real experience, I will often ask Tom about something that crosses my mind on the moment. I think I asked something about apparent wind and true wind, and his eyes grew wide and he gently launched into as perfect and clear an explanation as I'll ever get in my life. And yet even within that rather mundane short lesson, the enthusiasm and confidence was intoxicating.
The main boom, I think, as I recall, is 38 feet long. And
he was and is literally immersed and enveloped in his love of the sea.
Is that they're tensioning the luff.
And if that sea is a religion, then Jolie Brise isn't just a church. She's a cathedral.
5-to-1 purchase on it. So when you add that to the...
Right, well that's enough bromance for now. Let's get on with this film. I was shooting on a Super 35 sensor camera, a Sony PMW F3. It's old, like me, but it's very, very good, and it was the first time I'd shot anything in S-Log. S stands for Sony. Trying to keep the explanation simple, S-Log is a way of shooting video with a wide dynamic range. That means you're recording much more tonality than normal, and that gives you the ability to claw back some of the things that often get lost in some filming conditions. For example, when you're filming afloat, there's lots of glare from the sun on the water, and that makes it tricky with proper exposure. But getting the exposure right so you can see the water and the deck without it all going nuclear winter white on you can be a real challenge. S-Log means you've got much more flexibility in post-production, after the editing process, to be able to adjust the settings to get the best out of the image. The original S-Log footage looks a bit bizarre to the inexperienced eye. It looks flat and lifeless. But once you apply some adjustment, it literally comes alive in front of you, like here. The big pain is that S-Log needs a lot of care at the colour grading stage, and with me being basically lazy, fine if you employ a colorist to do it, but needs must, and I do everything myself in these films. So lots of heaving and hauling and all sorts of things, pulling ropes and sheets, and a nice look up the sails there. And a nice slow mix, you might call it a dissolve, I call it a mix, into a nice steady shot from onshore of JB. It was pure pleasure filming all this, I tell you. There's very few things I get so caught up in that I lose all sense of time and spatial awareness. I just get so wound up in getting the nicest shots I can, and I hope these come across like that. That shot there with the glasses, obviously I lined that one up because as soon as I saw the young lady wearing the sunglasses, I thought, right, let's get the reflection of the sails in there. So it's dead easy to organise that. You just say, look, just turn your head slowly from left to right and get a nice close-up shot.
Take it in their stride, because they've been doing it forever, but I tell you what, it's a while since I've been on a big pilot cutter going fast, and it's an absolute thrill. The sheer zest of 55 tons just piling through the water with all this rag up there.
I think these shots I got from Lee on Solent, I'm pretty sure it was, and it was on a day when we'd arranged that JB was going to be in the Solent training some sailors, and I was on the foreshore somewhere, I think it was Lee on Solent, and in regular phone contact with Toby the skipper, and I just said, look, I just need some nice shots, about 15-20 minutes worth of you sailing up and down, and I was on a nice long lens to be able to get those lovely shots.
Well, I'm down below now in the aft cabin of Jolie Brise, and you can see...
Meanwhile, we're in one of the cabins below deck.
This really is actually a high-tech ocean racer. Not what you'd think at all, looking at what's on deck. But I just thought I'd share with you a little bit about the history of this remarkable boat.
Tom doing one of his pieces to camera, and here we've got some archive stills of Jolie Brise from many moons ago.
Being built around about 1910, 1911, around Northern Europe.
Using the stills like this can be a bit of a problem because if they're in a vertical format and it doesn't quite fit in with the widescreen format, 16:9 aspect ratio, then you've got to do a bit of jiggery pokery to fit them in.
And you can see the development of the shape if you look at all the history.
But these shots are all okay. I think I tweaked this one in Photoshop just so we can get the whole line's plans a bit closer together from the profile view and the plan view.
Right at the end of the line. In fact, she never worked for what she was built for, which was to go...
Tom looking very relaxed, and actually I can just see a bit of wire poking out from around his waist where the lavalier mic, which is tucked into his shirt collar, when it goes down inside his shirt and comes out to the bottom of the shirt, it's just poking out. You probably wouldn't notice that. Any cameraman, any camera woman, any filmmaker would notice that and say, it's a bit of wire from the microphone, but never mind.
He took her away and he fished with her for, I don't know, 5 or 6 years, not terribly successfully, and then she got her break.
Obviously it's a bit cramped below deck, and you sort of have to pick your spaces. I had the camera, I would imagine, on my lap or knee, and maybe I was sitting a tiny bit higher. I might have been perched, squished into a little desk space or a nav table or God knows what, but you just wedge yourself in, hold the camera nice and steady, and concentrate on the frame. And I think we were moving along in the Solent here, but you wouldn't notice because the camera's wedged and there's no rocking sensation for the camera. I think if you're holding the camera freehand, then there might be the occasional notice of movement, but not here.
Or just generally had a rough time, and JB just stomped her way through it and won. She won 2 out of...
Some of Tom's pieces to cameras do go on a tiny bit, but I don't mind. And it's just knowing that you're going to be comfortable holding the camera wedged into a corner for a good 5 to 10 minutes, maybe sometimes.
She became a famous racing yacht, and through her, the Ocean Racing Club was formed, which very rapidly developed into the Royal Ocean Racing Club that we have today.
It's amazing that Tom has all this information up in his head. He doesn't need to do any research or looking at notes or anything like that. It's all up in his head, and it just comes out in a beautiful flow.
These gentleman called Signor Lobato, who loved the boat and really looked after her, and he kept her for ages. And then when the Portuguese Revolution came along, and it was going to be very left-wing, he was concerned that the boat might be seized as being a symbol of riches.
Now, I think there's a nice little change to present day coming up from a black and white photo, if I recall. Yeah, it's this one here. That's actually one of the shots from the film. I've made it look like a black and white photo, and then it's going to mix through, there we go, to present day.
She has been ever since, and they've looked after her, they've used her for sail training.
Cutaways, cutaways, cutaways. Shots of things happening, as many cutaways as you can get. The thing is, when you're filming aboard a pilot cutter like Jolie Brise, there's so much activity going on, it doesn't matter where you point the camera, there's always something happening, and it just becomes a delightful pleasure instead of struggling. You're far from struggling, you've got it all happening.
You never look back. There's absolutely nothing like it.
Some more shots, archive material that were filmed by somebody else, and then back to the pole again. And this is the 3-meter pole as well, held out from the side. It's a bit bumpy.
The great thing with these boats is always to make life easy on yourself. Don't fight it, because it will beat you.
This is officially a piece to camera because he's talking to the camera, but he's doing something else at the same time. When you film these things, you tend to do the piece to camera all in one chunk. And as the camera operator, you're listening through headphones to what he's saying, thinking about all the shots you're going to need to pick up after we've done the piece to camera to illustrate what he's talking about. And so you've got to make a mental note of what he's saying so that you're able to get those shots after we've finished doing the piece to camera. So all the footage you see intercut here didn't happen at the same time, obviously. It happened later, or maybe even earlier, as long as it illustrates and adds to the feeling of what he's talking about.
Takes charge, it'll have you over the side, it'll just put you into orbit, because it's a big, big sail, very powerful. Just think about it, 55 tons of boat here, 2,500 square feet of sail, and not a winch on board. And she wins races still today. All done with seamanship and timing.
Made me a bit dizzy, that one, but managed to stay upright just about.
Well, Toby, the weatherman said there'd be a bit of breeze at lunchtime. We finally got going. There's water pouring in the scuppers here.
So finally we come to the interview with Toby Maris, the current skipper of Jolie Brise. And this is more a conversation than an interview between Tom and Toby.
And you've also sailed all sorts of other boats, same as I have. We know what we're talking about here. Listen, what I'd like to know, your take, what's been lost and what's been gained in that 100 years when it comes to boats of a size?
Ooh. Well, I suppose the bits that have been lost, in my opinion, are the sea kindliness of the boats. The modern boats, they're lighter, they crash around a bit more. What's been gained?
This angle looks a bit odd because where's the horizon gone? In fact, we're on port tack, and the boat's heeling over, and so the main boom and mainsail is obscuring the horizon, which is above Toby's head, another 2 or 3 feet, but hidden behind the mainsail. So that's why it looks a tiny bit odd. but it's a comfortable position to be able to do it in, and we're sailing beam reaching, if I recall.
One of the good things about that is I think amateur sailors are going a lot further afield than they used to. So those have been the gains, but then the losses,
In fact, there's the wide shot, and you can actually see the horizon tilted, so we were heeled over. But it's a nice enough shot. Nice warm colours with the canvas of the mainsail and the lovely, beautiful wood timber of that boom and the superstructure of the cabin top.
Experience. Do you carry much stuff away?
No, not really. No, I'll tell you what. So in the 25 years that I've run her,
So this interview was done on just obviously the one camera, and cutaways like that I got afterwards. They're a bit of a cheat. If we had two cameras, then we would film the interview once. If we got one camera, so we film the interview from the position I'm in there, just the shot of Toby, or sometimes it's a two shot with Toby and Tom in it. And then after the interview, which might be anything from 10 to 20 minutes long, we keep them seated exactly where they are, and I move around and get a wide shot a bit further back behind Tom, and obviously what we call a reversal shot, because it's the reverse angle, looking over Toby's shoulder at Tom. And this is so we can use Tom's cutaway as an edit point. So there's no visual jarring. I know it's common to see on YouTube and such the jump cuts that they'll put in, but I'm afraid in broadcast just don't do that sort of thing, and it's got to be a nice, seamless experience when you're listening to somebody talking and not be jarred by visual images jumping around. So what do I actually mean by jump cut? Well, let's take a look at this clip of Toby in the edit software. And we can see that the video is the blue strip and the audio is the green strip. And if I just play it, you'll see in the viewer above that Toby is talking, and we can see the timeline. I'm dragging the cursor along the timeline, and we want to cut Toby down a bit because he's going on a bit too long. So we're going to chop a bit out of the middle of this clip of Toby. So I've selected an in point, and now I'm going to find an out point, and that's the bit I want to delete. So I literally select it and delete it. That leaves a hole. So I'm going to drag the rest of the clip back up to the front of the clip, and it joins at this point here. So if I play that and we look at the join, what happens? It jumps. That's what we mean by jump cut. So we need to tidy that up a bit and make it nice and smooth. And so what I'll do now is I'll go back to the brushes, and I'm going to find a shot of Tom listening. This is going to be the cutaway that covers the jump cut. And so finding a shot of Tom listening, actually not as easy as it sounds, because Tom likes to talk. So I've got to tell him to be quiet for a few minutes, please, Tom, and just listen, so we can get a nice clean shot of you listening. So I find a shot of Tom listening. I select an in point, and I'll select an out point. That's probably somewhere about there just before he starts talking. And I will drag it down onto the timeline, and you can see where the cursor is now. It's just dragging the shot down of Tom, and it covers the jump cut, a bit like a Lego brick covering two other Lego bricks. And we can drag that down and incorporate it into the timeline, and you'll see as it drops down there that it covers the jump cut nicely. And if we play it, and looking at the viewer on the right, you can see Toby talking, you can see Tom listening, and you can see Toby talking again. So I'll play that one more time, and I'll put it in the middle of the top there. There's a shot of Tom, and back to Toby, and it's nice and clean. That's what we mean by covering a jump cut with a cutaway.
Tom, if I couldn't drive the boat after 26 years, then we'd all be in a lot of trouble, wouldn't we?
We would. We would.
So we're back into the interview with Toby again, and there lurking at the bottom of frame is the microphone, which is sort of stuffed down between them to pick up the sound. And well, it could have been out of shot really, but never mind. Doesn't matter. They're having fun.
Thank you, Tom.
Yeah. So we're setting up for a jibe now. Main sheet's coming in.
So now we're doing a jibe. And that shot there is from Leon Solent from the foreshore looking across the Solent, and that shot there is from on deck. And it's nice to be able to tell the story of the jibe from both those vantage points.
The leech of the mainsail and the topsail will be holding up the topmast.
I'm sort of tucked on deck somewhere forward of Tom's helm position there, and he's got a wireless mic on, so we're not connected by wires or anything, so we've got some freedom to roam.
In a second when they've got the new one on. Good to go, everyone.
And it was nice to get this shot because Tom's explaining everything that's going on, surrounded by organised chaos, basically.
Pulled right in on this great big heavy boat. She just steers.
As Jolie Brise comes around into a jibe, you can see the sails going slack and the boom moves across, or in this case gets pushed across by Toby.
The jibe. Keeping my head down out of the way, don't get garroted.
It's a great way to illustrate exactly what Tom's talking about.
To get a bit of apparent wind, which is what we now need.
I was lucky with the weather on both days. It was very similar weather, so it matches up nicely.
As soon as that foresail comes across and the main sheet comes back in, we'll be on our way. Just lovely.
And that's a lovely shot there with lots of activity going on around Tom.
I sit there like God Almighty, and the crew are working their nuts off, making it all happen. In comes the main sheet, get my bottom out of the way, and we're steadily coming up. David's heaving away on the jib top.
You got the chance, you go.
We're almost on course, and it's going to be a close reach.
One of my favourite shots. Absolutely love that. Makes the hairs on the back of my neck stand up. Can't beat a bit of bow wave, I always say.
Sailing this boat, as you do.
So here we are back on board again and continuing the interview with Toby. And what we did there was we broke away from Toby's interview to illustrate the jibe. And that's quite a nice technique because in a long interview that goes on for some time, you often get viewer fatigue. So it's nice to break these things up into sequences. So we put the jibe in there to make it a bit more interesting. And then we can come back to Toby in the rest of his interview, and it just keeps things a bit fresher and more interesting.
Get all the pressure off everything.
So this interview situation, where we've got Toby and Tom sat down on deck, is quite a controlled thing, and you never quite know with Tom when he's going to go off-piste. So you have to be on your guard, and when it does happen, you have to decide, am I going to run with this? Or am I going to switch off the camera? Well, it's always wiser to run with it because if you don't have it, you can never use it. And so things like this happen.
And also on here, we our speeds are good enough that when we do go down, when we're going to drop the apparent wind so much, I mean, we could almost even demonstrate that right now if you like, Tom.
Yeah, we could, couldn't we?
Would you like that?
Yeah, why don't we do that? Let's do it.
You couldn't just point us straight downhill to give us a little demonstration about the apparent wind, could you?
She's bearing away.
So the helmsman turns Jolie Brise downwind to show the loss of apparent wind, and Tom likes that, and it was a nice way of illustrating on the moment something that they're talking about. And in fact, there's the horizon behind Toby as we've lost the heel.
So
if
we've got a problem, that's what we do. No wind today, is there?
So it's nice just to run with it and busk it.
All that ourselves.
Yeah, prime seamanship, mate. That's what people need. That's what people need. Let the boat talk to you.
Anyway, we can go back.
Yeah,
upwind
stuff
now.
her back up. Go on, give us some. We're ready now, Adam. Yeah, skipper says give it some.
So there we go. We start to feel the power coming back on again. She'll take a minute or two to get going, and we'll be over on our rear again. I'll be looking at your eyes, looking down here.
I know, isn't that a wonderful thing? You see, right now it's all right, isn't it? Because we haven't got going, so the apparent wind's not there, but she'll start generating her own wind in a minute and start flying, and the goldfish will be swimming along the deck down there.
Goldfish.
Yeah. Well, as long as they're not enjoying it, it's no sin, Toby, is it?
Absolutely love that. Very funny.
Right, well, Toby has generously agreed to heave the boat to now, which is a very easy
So
thing
here's
to do.
Tom stood up at the bow, and we're going to heave to. It was great that the crew and skipper were so accommodating and able to perform all these maneuvers so that Tom could talk about them. I see Tom hanging onto a halyard there, and in fact I made a mistake of grabbing hold of the mast at one point, and when you're holding a camera you have to be a bit careful because when you're a sailor, one hand for you, one hand for the boat. When you're a cameraman or a camerawoman, it's one hand for you, one hand for the boat, and one hand for the camera. So how does that work? I grabbed hold of the mast at one point, or I brushed against the mast, and it's full of tallow, which is that grease that helps the gaff jaws go up and down the mast. So it's quite slippery, and when you've got delicate electronic equipment and greasy stuff on your hands, doesn't quite work, but never mind.
Head sails are all stopping her now instead of sucking her forwards.
Tom absolutely in his element as he's describing what happens when Jolie Brise heaves to.
The boat will find an equilibrium.
Again, it was lovely to be able to get this from on deck and from off the boat, to be able to see exactly what Tom's talking about.
And that's the way to do it.
So there's a nice bridging shot between heaving to and below deck. We're in the main saloon, and Tom wanted to do a piece down here because he describes how he was hired by the owner of Jolie Brise to sail to Spain to pick up boxes and boxes of Rioja. And he wanted to be in the main saloon for a specific reason, which you'll see in a minute. And again, we're sort of crammed into a fairly confined space, and Tom in his element, of course.
And the money that you have made will go to support the ship. And I thought, well, what a noble enterprise. So I signed on straight away.
It never fails to amaze me, the absolute glee in his eyes as he's describing these things.
They handed me 2,000 quid, £2,000. And away we went, me and my pals, and 3 of the excellent students, some of which I am still in touch with. And we took her down to Spain, and we had a good look around Spain, and in the end we couldn't find where to buy the wine, and finally we were standing in front of the yacht club, and the Commodore came out, Signor Urgato, and he said, "That is the famous Jolie Brise." And we said, "Well, it is, yes sir." And he said, "Well, what are you here for?" And we told him, and he said, "I will arrange this." And he did. And 2 or 3 days later, 200 cases of the finest Rioja arrived, and we spread them out in this saloon. They came right up to here, and my little daughter, who was, how old would she be? She'd be about 3 at that stage. She's now Director of National Historic Ships, I should say. In those days, she was a little 3-year-old girl. I have a picture
Absolutely
of her.
The money shot, that shot of Hannah sat on top of the Rioja. Fantastic photos from a long time ago.
Gale of wind in the Biscay.
Nice to be able to incorporate those images into Tom's piece to camera here.
No problem at all. Isn't it great to sit down here and listen to the rattle of the guys laying the boat up on deck? They're just.
I think I'm just going to let him finish off here in his own inimitable style.
And when we came into the channel, we finally got a wonderful fair wind, and we ran up channel. We came past the casquettes in the dark, and we ran 40 miles in 4 hours on the Walker log. I've never been so fast in a heavy displacement boat in my life before or since, and we overtook 2 coasters going past the casquettes. What they must have thought as they saw the single green light come up astern and then turn to white as we roared away up channel. And I realised then how Jolie Brise had won all those races, and she's still doing it. But she changed my life, because a year later I went out, sold my house, and went out and bought myself a big Bristol Channel pilot cutter and sailed away to the Arctic, points west, and a new life. And it all started with Jolie Brise. She changed my life as she has changed so many, and will continue to do. There is nothing like a great ship for shaping the world.
I've seen this end sequence dozens and dozens of times, and it still brings goosebumps. It's absolutely stunning. Absolutely love it. It was just an absolute pleasure to work on this film and to be able to capture these images. Tom's thoughts, absolutely fantastic. The smiles say it all. I wanted lots of smiles, lots of happy faces, because that's what Jolie Brise does to you. Just a pleasure. If you've got any questions, please leave them in the comments. If you've enjoyed the video, please do remember to leave a like, and why not subscribe? Thanks for watching.